tell me, sir, in your understanding, what is gender-based violence?
First and foremost, fundamentally, I do not support any violence against any other human being. Let's begin on the foundation there.
Yes, sir.
Human beings must respect each other. Back again to what our ancestors taught us. Umuntu ngumuntu, ngabantu ubuntu. Right. We back to the basics, the fundamental basics. I do hear this expression that is so much currency these days, gender-based violence. So I do not support any violence against women. I do not support any violence by women against men. And I do not support violence by women against women. And I do not support violence by men against men. But I dare say we must look at things at the root cause of problems. Not only the symptoms or not only the peripheral. So that when we come with solutions and when we work solutions, we have an integrated and we have a comprehensive strategy other than keep on harping on things that are not fundamental when we know what is fundamental to the problem. Absolutely.
Wow. But from whichever way we look at it, it seems as if our women and children are mostly victims, especially most of the time. Is it because we as men don't have control over our emotions, or what do you think are the major causes of gender-based violence, and why is it that it's mostly men that perpetrate such?
I've made myself abundantly clear that I do not support any type of violence. Whether it's men against women, women against men, women against women, and women against children, children against, whichever way, I do not support. Ubuntu, it's about peaceful progression. So let me give a historical perspective. I'm speaking my mind how it came about to have the violence that we're having right now. It came from slavery, and slavery is always meant to divide and rule. It came through colonialism, which is also a murdering enterprise of exploiting and dehumanizing human beings. So all these things go into your memory repository of the people who are being inferiorized, both men and women. And these enterprises also, they went into neocolonialism, which is going on until today, individualizing people, breaking up families. Right now, what has happened from slavery up to now is that the structure of the world is only for the ruling elite, the few, very, very few. And the greater majority of human beings, and they tell us this nonsense that there's overpopulation and all that. The problem is not overpopulation. The problem is the very few are getting the greater percentage of the money instead of distributing this money fairly. Now, coming back to this so-called gender-based violence, whichever way it goes, which I don't support. When you look at the problems, I'll give you an example in South Africa, what happened in South Africa, and you can equate it with what happened during slavery and colonialism. In South Africa, for instance, when mining started picking up on a serious note, they needed labor. So what they did is, instead of probably at least a lesser level of taking the whole family from all these areas, bringing your wife and children to Johannesburg to mine the gold and the diamonds, they needed only men. That's the labor they needed to super exploit. So only men were allowed to come and stay in hostels, and these were not family hostels. These were male hostels. I'm trying to show you how the man was corrupted, how the African man was emasculated, how the man and the African man's culture was totally soiled, right? So when they came here, they could only go back home once a year to go. The women could not come over here and visit because these were male hostels. So in the interim, I leave it up to your imagination. Did men lose their culture? Did men lose their values in the process? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Because for you to have Ubuntu, your whole family must be there. Your wife, your kids, your everything, they must all be there. So through that whole process of socialization and internalization of inferiorizing the African man, the African man lost his what you call his campus, his focus.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes.
Same thing happened in slavery. Slavery did not care about your value. Slavery was extracting maximum labor, maximum profits from you. In the process, you became inferiorized, being told that you are nothing. Yours is to obey and die. That's basically what happened. Right. So in the aftermath, by the time we fought and we liberated Africa to a great extent, with South Africa being the last decolonized country in 1994, most African men in Africa and globally, through slavery, colonialism, and neoliberalism, they had become damaged goods. But not only African men, and also African women. So the cocktail thereof, what came out of that, it's very, very corrupt. We have one of the most unequal societies, South Africa, in the world. Where is most of the wealth distribution going to? It's still going to the ruling elite. Those who benefited from apartheid. That's what's happening. Greater percentage of South Africans are not working, 50% plus. Don't trust the official statistics. Many black South Africans are not working. So add that cumulatively to what slavery and apartheid did, and use that same template all over the world, right? So you have a situation whereby you are actually putting cat and mouse together, and does cat and mouse agree?
No.
They do not agree. Hence you have this violence that you are having, right? Because in the whole process, it's not only the men who lost their values, women also lost their values. Through what? Through slavery, apartheid, colonialism, and neocolonialism.
Morality was more.
This is what I'm saying. There were no checks and balances of Ubuntu, right? So now there is this blame game. They wanted just to blame it on men. I would rather, personally, if those who want to look at it and just blame it on men, it's fine. That's their perception. As scholars, we trade ideas and we agree to disagree.
Yes,
I see nothing wrong with that. But my perspective, my stand is, I look at it holistically. I look at it comprehensively.
It's far bigger than just the men.
Yeah, it's far bigger than just say gender-based violence, whether it's men against women or women against men, or whichever way. Right? It's much bigger. It's a systematic thing, and this system still continues. It's there. It's live. Every day it individualizes people, making people more and more selfish, looking after my stomach only, and those values are being passed to our children. That's why we see even our youth today, they are very personal, they are very individualistic.
Very scary.
Yeah, it's only when trouble hit them, you know.
Remember.
It's only when trouble, then they remember mommy and daddy and home and all that, right? But life is not an app. You know, our youth are all about apps, downloading apps and all that. You know, life is not. Unfortunately, when those problems hit them, it's not their fault. It's a whole system thing. You cannot download when the challenges of life catch up with you, because there's no shortcuts in life. You might think you're smart, but all those shortcuts will be cumulative and they'll catch up with you. So the issue of gender-based violence, it's a much bigger issue. It's a societal issue, and at that level, it's a systematic issue. And that's why every time I keep on speaking of Ubuntu, because for me, against all knowledges that have been proffered into this world, against all knowledges, the greatest knowledge ever to have come across here is of African origin, and that is Ubuntu. There's no knowledge that can beat that knowledge. Thank you.
Wow. Let's talk about violence in general. No, let's not just restrict it to gender-based. Let's talk about holistically violence. You could see on most occasions is equated to poverty, to social disorientation. Whenever you hear violence against women and children, the next thing you look out for is some poor guy from some slum somewhere that is busy smoking all sorts of things and behaving animalistically. Do you think that gender-based violence has anything to do with poverty?
That is part of it. Remember, poverty is systematic. Because if you have the ruling class, if you have the global ruling class, that is always my perspective. I look at things holistically. If you have the global ruling class, once you are there at the top, globally, you create what I call a gated community.
Gated community.
Yeah, just like you have gated community before you go into North Cliff, into certain streets, there's a security guard there. Right. Now there are many ways of creating a gated community. You have the highest salaries, you have the greatest share dividends, you've got the better equities, you've got the better amenities. If you want to qualify for this club, you must be of this race, you must be of this type of income and all that. What does that do? It excludes the greater majority of the people who can't afford that salary, right? Who can't afford to go to that so-called Ivy League university, even as much as they do have the talent and all that, right? They cannot afford. Now, I want you to understand, Mr. Chuma, all that selectiveness and ring fencing to keep the global structure just for the very few, that is violence on its own. Violence is not just fighting, exchanging fists and shooting. Manner of behavior, psychological violence, spiritual violence. You will not qualify to get into this library because you will not qualify for you to get a postgrad university. You must have these type of points and this type of education. Everything is made very exclusive, not inclusive. Do you understand?
Yes.
That is violence on its own. So the whole structure that has been built, it's meant for the very few, and quite strictly so until it has been challenged by people like China and the decolonization of Africa and all that. They do bring in pockets of Africans and pockets of Chinese and all that. But I don't think the Chinese care, because Chinese have their own civilization anyway in that sense. Right. So that on its own is violence. By the time you have what I would call middle in violence, where now you see ordinary people going against each other, where you see gangs being formed, they go into rich neighborhoods and rob and all that. Believe you me, the ruling structure of the world, they know all that. That is a consequence of that will happen. There will be gangs and all that. Why do you think they send them to prison and lock them up? Why do you think they bolster the police to go and lock them up? Why do you think the proliferation of that violence is within lesser income generating communities, and in this sense mostly black communities?
What are you doing here?
This area is for the rich white folks, probably very few blacks. Do you understand?
Yes.
So that is violence. So that violence you're talking about never touches them. So the other violence, probably, which other people see as violence, which is violence. For me, it's peripheral. Yes, it's dangerous and all that. It's a violence of desperation. It's a violence that is not culturalized. It doesn't emanate from the culture of Ubuntu. You understand? So they know. They steal all your resources, they steal all your talents and everything. They put it under what they call private law and rule of law, right? So when they've stolen from you and now you want to steal back and repossess what they took from you, they say you're breaking into private property. Yeah? You're breaking into private property. Now what I want to ask you, who are the indigenous owners of America? Are they not the Red Indians?
Red Indians, yeah. Red Indians.
But now if they are caught, they'll be told you are breaking. So do you see how a victim can be turned into a perpetrator and a perpetrator into a victim? Yes. They did the same thing in Australia. They did the same thing in New Zealand. They did the same thing in Africa. There's areas here, there's a lot of areas.
Yeah.
If I go into South Africa, they are owned by, land here in South Africa is owned by multinational companies. It's even owned by the late Queen, the British monarchy.
Especially in the Western.
Yes. Yeah. If you go right now into that land and say, I'm claiming my land, the very South African black police will come and arrest you. They will tell you you're breaking the law. The perpetrator becomes the innocent person, and the victim
becomes the perpetrator.
So not even the top politicians can walk into their land and claim it. Yeah. Even now they're very careful. They keep on saying expropriation without compensation. But they know there will be repercussions for that. Your own. But when they took our land, I'm talking about violence, I'm answering all this thing of violence.
Basically,
but I'm speaking holistically. But when they took our land, they took it by violence. They enforced taxes on us by violence.
True.
Right? Even up to today, our government, I know, because they do not have the power to demand that. That's why reparations, as Africans globally, we must not keep quiet. The last time I put across my ideas how we should demand reparations and some of the areas that must be covered, and I think other people can add much more brilliant input than me. So reparations, it's something they must pay forever, because they cannot replace the lives of our mothers whom they raped and killed and all that. So all that is violence. So don't be fooled by these white people when they call themselves royals, wearing beautiful suits, ties, and looking so-called civilized. They are not civilized. They are thugs. Downright from the pit of hell. I say that because I know what they do to our people. I know what they do. And they hit you with deception. And some of our people can see it, some of our people cannot see it. So I say it, and I'll say it over and over again for our people to see it for what it is. Don't be fooled about how they dress. Don't be fooled by their royal carriages and their limousines coming out looking important and all that. They are filthy murderers, thugs. That's what they are. That's why as Africans you must stand up. We are in trouble. Thank you.
Wow. Tell me, violence, does it have color? Does it have a color?
I think on one hand, yes and no, it has color and it doesn't have color. Yes, there is violence when people were being enslaved, the transatlantic slave. Yes, they were enslaving the black body. So violence has color. It's the black body. When they wrote into their constitutions, when they colonized Africa through force and murdering Africans, they were doing it to the black body. Yes, it does. Violently, yes, it does have a color. When they set a so-called civilized scholars and politicians from Oxford University, from Cambridge University, from Cardiff University, from Stanford University, from all these universities, when they set as so-called civilized people, making constitutions soberly, drawing up constitution, saying they are the superior race and we are nothing. Who did they do it to? To the black body. So I will say the facts, the truth speaks for itself. Yes, violence does have a color.
Does it have a university degree? Does it have education? Does it have social qualification? Does it have societal acceptability?
When you speak of societal acceptability, when a certain nation went to bomb Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they killed, it was not a war front. Like I said the other day, those are industrial towns like Johannesburg. Right? It's another society. You can imagine the mindset that decided that we are going to bomb this place and that place. So you can imagine the mindset of those people, what society they come from. I will also, having said that, I've answered your question. Number two, there was also a time, and I'm talking about thousands, right into the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, even just after the Second World War, when thousands of black people were being lynched. Do you understand lynched? If they decided, a group of white hooligans, thugs, if they decided that this black man had done this, and these are historical facts.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I will speak it because it's my ancestors to whom this was done, and I will not keep quiet. They will take blacks, hang them at the picnic just after church. There will be a church here of white people which only allows white people. They would sit around. These are historical facts. You can go and research them. It's a fact. And in front of the whole white society, children and all that, women, white women, and white men, they would lynch the black men. And lynching literally means, I want to ensure that those who do not understand the English word, meaning that they would cut off the penis and the scrotum of the black man. They would cut it off.
While still alive.
While still alive, and you would actually bleed to death. And they did not do this to one or two. I lived in the States. Go to the Black Scholars, their museum. This is recorded history. They did it to thousands and thousands of black people. Now, I want you again to imagine the type of society that perpetrates that. How did these people grow up and all that? It's not just a band of thugs, a once-off thing. They did it over years from slavery. Many slaves were castrated.
Over a long period of time.
Yes, that was their price. Slaves were stubborn, were reluctant, who did not want to, and ran away, and once they caught them, they would be sodomized right in front of their children and every other slave, to instill fear and to instill the sense of superiority of the white people. So you ask me once again, I said yes and no, but I'm showing this past that this violence has a color. It's there to uphold this nonsense of theirs of white supremacy and saying we are inferior. Nobody is inferior to anybody, and nobody is superior to anybody. We are all cut from the same cloth. Yes, they refuse that, and they refuse that by murdering us. Recently, it just happened in Libya, right in front of us. Libya today, if you were to go there, Libya, it's a total mess. When those NATO planes went and bombed Libya, I'm talking about advanced warplanes. Do you think they were playing picnics, they were playing games? When they throw what they call smart bombs and all that, what do you think they were doing? Do you know what a bomb does when it splits your body into small parts?
Absolute destruction.
Yes, you have to imagine that and think for a moment.